Welcome back, guys, to yet another interview. And today I am here with LittleBigPlanet level designer Mark Hall. Can you maybe go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody before we get into the questions?
My name is Mark Hall. My PSN name was HallM3, and I was a community member that was hired by Talsia and Sumo to work on LittleBigPlanet PS Vita, LittleBigPlanet 3, and eventually I ended up working on Sackboy as well.
Awesome. And of course, when you were at Sumo initially over a decade ago as a level designer, first starting out, did it line up with your expectations of what you thought the job would be?
Not really, because I mean, coming from the community, like creating for yourself in the community and creating as a job for the game are two completely different things. But it taught me a lot about how to, at least when releasing a game is concerned, like keeping to a production schedule and like the exact process of what that should be and how it's passed to different people. That was a really big kind of learning curve. But it taught me a lot, and I also got to do so many different things that I never really thought I would. So, I primarily did level art when I first started. I wasn't doing much level design, but I did everything from sticker design, costume design. It was really fun to do so many different things. Even though I was hired as a level designer, I didn't actually do much of it until post-release. So.
What made you decide to work at Sumo?
It wasn't really a decision. It was basically I was invited very randomly to a game jam at Talsia Studios, and well, actually, I found out years later it was Stephen Isbell that put my name forward, and I went there in February of 2012 and had probably like 12 hours to make something, and they really enjoyed what I made. I met lots of other really cool community people, and a couple of months later, they invited me back to work there. And just because Talsia was kind of a small-ish company, PlayStation asked a lot of Sumo people to go work there and help finish the game as well. And I met a lot of Sumo people there. I met my now creative, oh my God, sorry. I met my now creative director there, and he was the one that offered me my job at Sumo. So it was just kind of a weird, basically he rang me when I was back at university being like, hey, would you want to come work for Sumo? And I was like, I probably should finish my degree. And I did. And then in the June of 2013, I went immediately to Sumo to start working on LittleBigPlanet 3. So, yeah.
Sweet. Can you tell me more about your relationship with the team and Steve and I? What was it like getting to know Stephen Isbell?
I mean, to be honest, I didn't really see a lot of Stephen Isbell whilst working on LittleBigPlanet 3. I think when I first went there, I think he was working quite near to us. I mean, the main thing was that obviously he wasn't actively, obviously he was technically a developer, but he wasn't actively working with us on the game. So I'm not sure if Stephen worked in the same office as us, but I do remember, like, particularly leading up to release, we worked quite closely together. I remember that he organized quite a lot of the post-release live streams and stuff. I really enjoyed. I got to do, I think, a couple of them with him, which was really fun. And obviously, once the game was released and all of that, we worked quite closely together. When we were working on all the new content, new DLC and stuff. We had a much more close relationship. So,
right. Okay, and about like post-release with LittleBigPlanet 3, can you talk about the contest you did with the community on Little Big Planet 3 before the shutdown, the workshop type
Oh,
event?
the context contest. That
Yeah.
I mean, that was quite late in its life cycle, I suppose. But like, yeah, it was. I'm not sure when exactly it was or when I did the first one, but it was basically, I guess, to try and reinvigorate the community a little bit. There wasn't a lot of contests going on at the time, I don't think, and I think the aim of it was basically. I think with other contests, at least what I saw was that the people who were still really dedicated in the community were people that loved making and like making really beautiful things and really intricate things. And I noticed that a lot of people kind of struggled more in the side of creating like the bare bones gameplay of levels. And I thought that was kind of an interesting take of maybe if I, as a level designer, designed what we as developers call a gray box, which is basically just a blank version of the level that is the bare bones gameplay. That's just it functions and you can play from start to finish, but it's just a bunch of gray boxes. And I was like, oh, that might be an interesting angle. I've never seen that before in another contest, but basically give away a level and people use their own creativity to decide what context that gameplay takes place within. And I think I only did a couple. I had a third one like ready to go. Obviously, with the shutdown, it wasn't possible to go ahead with it. But it was a really interesting exercise as a developer. There was a lot going on behind the scenes of like, making sure that the level was really easy to understand and that the gameplay was really easy to understand, and the gray box didn't like break, and if it did break, like how easy it was to fix and all these sorts of things. It was a real interesting task to like make really accessible and stuff. Yeah, I think it was somewhat successful. I think people really enjoyed it, and there was a lot of entries, a lot of really nice entries. So yeah, it was really nice to judge them and see so many people respond to it. It was really cool.
Right, that's amazing. And in terms of making like beautiful, intricate, levels and things like that, after you go through the process of gray boxing and then motifing and all that, what was it like designing levels for Little Big Planet 3? How did building levels differ between doing it by yourself versus a team?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, like it's a completely different vibe because you are the director, you are the artist, you are the designer when you're at home, which is a lot of fun. And I think when you are suddenly in a team, you've got so many voices, so many people. It's kind of a hierarchy of people like directing you, and it's I guess the main thing to really like focus on is getting feedback, which obviously is not really a thing when you're on your own. You're kind of your own critic, but it was really interesting. Like obviously the other thing is there's a lot that your level is not just your level. Like it's a cog in a machine of a game. And sometimes things just kind of change and you have no control. Like sometimes a level will just be cut. Sometimes a level completely changes context. Sometimes it's put a different part of the game. So you just kind of got to roll with the punches in a way. I think that's probably I think it's very easy when you're at home to be very precious about your work. And I think that's something when you work in a team on a larger project, you've got to kind of shake a little bit. Like nothing's you've got to treat nothing as permanent and nothing as too sacred. So that's probably the main thing that I took from starting in a team.
Right. And in terms of developing levels for Little Big Planet 3, Little Big Planet 3, had a good run, but what are your thoughts on its lifespan overall?
I mean, to be fair, when did it come out? 2014, and did it last a decade before it was shut down? I think it did, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you look at games today, like a decade is still for one entry, even not including all the other ones before it. But I think obviously it had a rocky start, and everyone knew that. I don't think we can deny it. And I wish we could have done more to kind of make it a more polished experience. I know working on other community projects afterwards, I did the Return to Carnivàlia series. I helped out on that a lot, and hearing them, I stepped in when basically they'd had like a big corruption and lost a couple of levels, and rightfully so. The creator was just like, I'm going to step out. I don't want to do this anymore, and I totally understand. But I felt like as a developer, I want them to release something rather than never to come out. And I think one of that is using my expertise as someone who developed it to try and get the most out of it, and to try and in its state that it released with all its quirks and stuff is to I think people were still able to create amazing things for a long time, and it was sort of just a beast. By the time the third game came out, I know it was basically a game built on a game built on a game, and it was such a beast of a tool that required a lot of taming and a lot of knowledge. And I think it was fantastic, and I think what people made was great. But it was just the nature of such an evolving title that I don't think they ever really anticipated it to last, 15 was it, 15, 16 years or something. Yeah, it's 16, crazy.
17, yeah.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy when you think about it. And in terms of LittleBigPlanet 3 having a rocky start, what are your thoughts on the dive-in feature not being there in the game day one?
Oh, was that not a thing? Gosh, I didn't remember that. God. Yeah, I mean, there was quite a lot of stuff that was pretty not great. It was just one of those things. I mean, obviously it was a big rush to get it out, and there was a lot going on behind the scenes. We were kind of, our own ambition was kind of our undoing, I suppose, just because we wanted to try and get as much stuff for people as possible. And then, there's a lot of polish that needs to go into a game that has such a, in-depth create mode. And it's one of those things as well, again, just because it's so old, as I said, a game built on a game built on a game, like you can change one thing somewhere and it breaks something somewhere else, and, seemingly two completely unrelated things. And it was just such a, as I said, a beast of a game that unfortunately, I think those sorts of things, I think it was just a call of we have to not release with some things in order to just get the game out at all, and then we'll add it back in later. I think that was probably the reasoning behind it.
Yeah. What do you think about the shutdown of the LittleBigPlanet servers? How did you feel?
The one that happened, the last one?
I would say all of the shutdowns, the one in 2021, the one in 2024. I mean, cumulatively, how did it make you feel, not only going from the, some of the first shutdowns, but coming to the last shutdown and having that be the final one?
Yeah, I don't think I was super affected by the last one, as in like it being down and then them announcing it's not coming back. I think by that point I'd kind of accepted and kind of moved on. Obviously it's still awful. I wish that if you really think about it, it's such a monumental, such an influential series. It really did a lot of things first, like what we consider now, like DLC and battle passes and all that sort of stuff. LVP kind of pioneered that like mentality of an evolving game, and I think for it to go out on such a whimper is such a shame. For it not to have its flowers. Like even if it was a case of yes, it's shutting down, but everyone could spend a week playing their favorite levels again or something like that, just to kind of say goodbye. But it did affect me a lot, just because I was very emotionally attached to the series, again, just because it was such a big part of my life. picking it up on day one in 2008, and then right the way through to, pretty much maybe 2021, 2022. I was still actively creating and engaging with the community. So yeah, it was definitely hard to kind of let it go and imagine. It sounds a bit like weird talking about it, but like it was a really big deal to kind of move on and like kind of let it go. But I'm there now. Like, yeah, I'm kind of moved on from it. But I still think it's nice that it's going in some capacity and people are still interacting with it. But yeah, it is definitely a shame.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll say one thing. This is more of a comment, but I'm impressed that you've moved on with it because for me, I've been playing the game since I was 6 years old. Like it's been a big part of my life too. And thing is, I don't think I'll never move on from it. Not because I don't have the capacity to, but because there is still a community behind this game, and me and A still believe that continuing the legacy of this game, because if you think about it, like I talked about this with Dean Wilkinson, he was the writer on LittleBigPlanet, about like, just keeping the legend going and having, all these people who played LittleBigPlanet as kids becoming parents and then having their kids, be able to play a new LittleBigPlanet game. And on that track, do you think there should be a new LittleBigPlanet game? And would you prefer the idea of LittleBigPlanet 4 or Sackboy Big Adventure 2?
Can I say neither?
Sure.
I think if there was going to be anything, it should be a complete hard reboot, I think, of like LittleBigPlanet. So like basically go back to basics. I mean, I just fundamentally think that LittleBigPlanet 4 cannot exist in terms of it being a true sequel to LittleBigPlanet 3. It's literally just impossible. Like, as in, as I said, it was a game built on a game built on a game. Like, I would say it's literally impossible to recreate LittleBigPlanet 3 and add to it. Just because it's 2 console generations later. The original engine was not built to be iterated on this much. You would need to start from scratch. And I think the other thing is you want it to progress. You want it to be able to have or like utilize PS5, PS6. I don't know. I mean, I don't know when it would come out, but like it's sometime in the future, you would want it to like be able to have like soft body physics and maybe more 3D components, or I don't know. You would want that, and I think, again, like having to recreate every single asset, every single gameplay mechanic, every single thing. Like, even if you did that, it would not be backwards compatible. Like, so it's almost like defeats the point of it, because I think that's what people would want out of it. So, yeah, I would do a hard reboot, make like LittleBigPlanet, whatever, and yeah, really like drill into what made the first LittleBigPlanet so great. Maybe take bits and pieces from the others that were really cool, and yeah, just make a really nice package that's up to date and modern, and yeah, it kind of gives people the tools to make stuff that maybe they couldn't make before, and is a kind of a new avenue of content. So.
Yeah, and that's amazing that you touched on going back to the beginning, because that's what Dean also mentioned. I mean, he created the Imagosphere and the cerebral umbilical cord, all those ideas. He was the one who made those up. And he's like, yeah, Sony should go back to the beginning and revisit what LBP was all about. And on the track of giving people the tools to make things, can you talk about how LittleBigPlanet 3 was supported with updates and DLC? Such as the Disney and SpongeBob DLCs being delisted?
Yeah, as I said, I don't. There's not really much to say about that. I mean, that was just completely out of our control in terms of Disney and stuff. Didn't want that, so it's just the nature. I mean, again, I know that I said LittleBigPlanet was a huge pioneer for like a lot of stuff, but obviously big tie-ins and brands and stuff was a big part of that. And again, that was an avenue that is part of that. Like licenses and things. Like sometimes it's just a case of like, Disney. I think. I mean, I'm not sure how well this is known, but like, there was a big part of history where Disney completely removed themselves from the video game space, and I think that was just a knock-on effect of that. So, but yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's move into some simpler questions to give ourselves a bit of a break here. What would you say is your favorite Little Big Planet game out of the whole franchise?
I really like Little Big Planet. Okay, I like 2D games for 2 different reasons. I think Little Big Planet PS Vita is the best story, and I think Little Big Planet PS Vita is really good. Like, it gets a lot right, and I really loved the. I mean, I'm being maybe a bit biased because obviously it was the first one I worked on, but I also really think Tarsier did a good job of taking that franchise on as their baby. Like, it felt very LBP, but also very Tarsier, which I think was a good match. It's created some of my favorite curators. Like, I love Mrs. Sunshine is like my spirit animal. So, but I also really love LBP2 in that I think it's got the best storyline. Like, I think it's very grand and feels very fun and very quirky. I do think it probably has. I think it has the best tool set. I think it probably has the weakest asset set, like in terms of decorations and stuff. LBP3, I think, is probably the superior one in that regard. But I don't know if I could pick a super favorite. I'll say PS Vita. Again, there's a sentimentality there, but I think I'd pick that one.
That's fair. What are your favorite Little Big Planet story mode levels?
Oh, okay, that's even more specific. I mean, yeah, I again, just because maybe there's some sentimentality there, but I worked on the Return to Carnivalia community levels, and I did the Land of Odd and Spooky Mansion levels. And again, I love Mrs. Sunshine, and her levels, I think, in the PS Vita one were so cool. I remember playing them for the first time when I was at Tarsier, and there was one of them had just had an art pass, and I remember playing an updated version of it. And there was a moment where I got a legitimate jump scare. I was like, this is so cool. Like, I mean, LBV's never really lent into like that horror before, and I think it was really, really cool. And I really loved working on the Return to Carnivalia when I basically took that entire theme and turned it into one level. I mean, it was such a task. Like, it was such an undertaking to do. But I did the kind of cellar level, the kind of light guiding Mrs. Sunshine stuff. I did the laboratory stuff. I mean, I love that theme. I think it's definitely my favorite theme, and it's got some really great levels.
What are your favorite Little Big Planet community levels?
Ooh, oh my gosh, that is a ask. I mean, I think I was inspired a lot by people that, well, ironically, I ended up working with quite a few of them. But like, I mean, Stevie Big Gun's levels were always amazing. And like Lock Stitch, there's a guy called Kevin that I ended up working with. His work was always amazing. It was a super gameplay focused, but the theming was always really cool. What was his name? Emineska? I can't think what his actual name is, but I worked with him for a little bit. But his was so quirky and like always had amazing characters and dialogue and stuff. I loved his stuff. But yeah, and Comp for MC was always really good in terms of like gameplay. Like, I think I worked with Matt as well. He was great. He worked remotely for Tarsier, so I didn't see him, but I worked with him. Yeah, and my creative director now, he was called. I mean, shout out to him. He'd be so embarrassed, but his username was Jack, of course, and he made a lot of really simple LBP1 levels. Some really great. It was kind of before there was a lot of like more tech that was added later in DLC and stuff. But he did a lot of really basic like co-op related stuff, which was really fun. But yeah, I think that those are my main inspirations.
And talking about tech with DLC, what's your favorite LittleBigPlanet DLC out of any of the games?
Wow, that is I mean, it would have to be like, in terms of adding stuff to the game. I mean, the move pack was obviously. I mean, it was kind of harbored by the fact, kind of hindered by the fact that you needed a move controller for it. But what it added, I think, was some of the best content. With the sticker panel and stuff, that was so game changing. And then probably DC Comics. I mean, Tarsier Studios. I mean, I remember working on a LittleBigPlanet 3 and us getting the build-in for the DC Comics pack and us all playing it together in the meeting room and just being like, this is so good. Like, this is how you make LittleBigPlanet levels. It was just, yeah. I mean, the cape and the wall jump and stuff, it all feels so great. Yeah, and then I mean, just for sentimentality's sake, but I really liked the Journey Home DLC. I'm working on that, like getting to work with those themes again, and like kind of adding. I mean, obviously, they were kind of older themes, and kind of getting to add a little bit to the world and the lore of all that was really fun. And like designing new costumes, I got to do that, and that was great. Doing the stickers, and I got to art the wedding theme. I would say that's probably also one of my favorite themes. And yeah, that was really fun getting to work with Frida and Don Lu again. That was really cool.
Going on a bit of a side tangent here, this is actually not a question listed in my questions list, but I was curious when you mentioned the meeting room. Do you remember when Saba first came out? When I think Steven Isbell and David Dino, it might have only been Steven Isbell, where you guys were all in the meeting room and you were watching the live stream that we had on our channel with Cruz. He was streaming Sapo Big Adventure, and you were watching it in the meeting room. It was one of the streams. Do you recall anything about that? Because I remember telling
streams for Saba.
Yeah,
and I was in it.
You were watching with Steven Isbell, I think, or some of the other sumo staff. Someone on YouTube or maybe another platform, like in the meeting room on the big screen, playing the game. And I think it was us. A guy named Cruz was helping us out with the channel, and he was doing the stream.
Oh my god, I don't have a memory of that. The only live stream I remember doing is we did one initial one where, maybe that was it. I remember doing one like a TikTok live stream. Gosh, I really did. Definitely Sackboy, not LittleBigPlanet.
Sackboy, yeah.
God, no, I don't remember.
Yeah, I can send you a stream link later once we're done with
sure. Yeah.
So you can maybe refresh your memory, because I remember him telling me something about that. And he was like, yeah, the sumo staff definitely saw it, but it might have only been Steve and I and a couple of others. Anyway.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, what do you think about copied levels in the community? What's your opinion on those?
I mean, ironically, I guess I kind of contributed to that by doing my context contest, because that had to be a copyable level. The amount of, I remember when we went to judging and like searching for that, so many basic just copy paste of the level kind of came up. But the only thing I think about it is like there was a lot of stuff where I would have loved to like properly iterate on it in LittleBigPlanet 3. I mean, as I said, there was so many new features. I think it would have been really nice to focus more on that kind of side of the game, and like particularly like working together, and because one of the main focuses of LittleBigPlanet 3 was like being able to create bigger things, and but I don't think there was any kind of supportive, overall tools to make team, like working in a team, any easier. So like obviously copying levels and stuff, that people used a lot of that, like with like lockboxes and things like that. And it would have been nice just to be able to share a level to someone, like just send it to a friend. But I guess copying levels was I never really, other than sending levels and like having that mad panic of like, I'm going to unlock my level, you copy it quickly, and then like, I'm going to lock it again. I didn't really interact with a lot of copying stuff, but it would have been also nice to like have a feature where it was like copy but you can't republish, or copy but like it's only for these people or something like that. But yeah, I mean, do you have a specific use case for like what you wanted me to comment on?
Well, do you remember Latin Player 10?
Was that oh, as in like copying other people's levels, like when they're not marked as copyable?
So I guess this might be a little bit of a different question, because he did copy other people's levels. But
yeah,
it relates to this. Do you remember him in the community in the early days?
The name rings a bell, yeah.
Because there were the bomb survivals. There were the, what else were there? Yeah,
shark survivals, like all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on those? Like
on bomb survivals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things. It was kind of the dawn of, it was like, as I said, it was so influential to what we see nowadays, but like, it was almost like, it was like the dawn of something like a TikTok trend, really, wasn't it? It was like the content creation version of like a TikTok trend. It was like someone taking a format and just like completely riffing off of it in like a completely random way. So you had like, everything from like pizza chain bomb survival, cruise ship bomb survival, aeroplane bomb survival, all these sorts of things, hotel, all these sorts of things. And yeah, I mean, it was just one of those things where I know that people played them, so and people had fun playing them, so why not? Yeah, it was still people being creative, making levels. It was just using a format, wasn't it, that people knew was fun?
Right. What do you remember about LittleBigPlanet 3's launch day? What were some of the most memorable moments when it first launched?
That's an interesting question. If I'm honest, I don't actually remember launch day. I think the main thing was just because it was not a very smooth launch, we were all like, I remember, for instance, when we sent review codes out to people reviewing it, I remember like at that point, the build that we sent out, like the pop-it just didn't work. We were all like, it was like a nightmare because it was just, everything was on fire. So yeah, it wasn't really much of a celebratory time. But I think once it kind of started dying down and the people started posting what they were making and things like that, that was more rewarding. Like people proving that, the additions that had been added, the kind of 3D and the characters and all this sort of stuff, like they were worthwhile and people were creating like mad things. That was more like, oh yeah, like it was more rewarding, like as developers, to be like, people would start sharing videos of things people had made around the office, and it was kind of like it kind of felt cool that people were using the things that we'd released.
Right. Going back earlier than LittleBigPlanet 3, were you around for the peak of LittleBigPlanet 2's community? And what do you think, if you remember any of this, about Trilly and LittleBigPlanet fashion and styles?
Well, what's Trilly? Sorry.
So Trilly was a picture room level on LittleBigPlanet that people used to join all the time. They would join it, and there would be a lot of shenanigans going on in that level. People were slapping each other and using guns, of
Okay.
course.
Yeah, I
Were you
mean,
around for that?
I wasn't around for that. I will say that like I wasn't a very big costume person. I was more of a create person. Like I really loved getting into levels, making gameplay, all that sort of stuff. Um, so I didn't really make a lot of costumes. I know that the people loved making costumes. I was once at a user test for one of the games, and it was with small children, and as we were supposed to be asking them to test a level, like, and as soon as they realized they could customize Sackboy, we were just what like there was no stopping them. Like they just were dressing them up, stickering them, all sorts. So I know that obviously that was like such a big thing for people, and I love that. And I think it was such a testament to the game and its create mode that people made such a variety of kinds of levels, like hangouts and you know hangouts and costume, all the fashion shows and all these sorts of things. Like I think it's so great. And again, you see it now in games like Roblox and Fortnite and all these different things. Like people want to have such a variety of experiences within these kinds of games. And I'm not gonna poo-poo or stop people from doing that. I think that's great. I love that.
What happened? Can you remember anything about what happened to Little Big Planet 3 that drastically changed from early footage to now, specifically relating to the layer system, as well as maybe the dephysicalizer tool? When it was actually supposed to be added in Little Big Planet 2, but it was actually saved for Little Big Planet 3.
Okay, I actually didn't know it was supposed to be Little Big Planet 2. I did know that obviously it was in LBP PS Vita. A lot of the stuff from PS Vita I thought were great additions. It had the static dynamic from the PSP. It had the dephysicalize. It had the layer shifting thing, which was such a late addition into LBP3. I really gunned for that to be added. I really didn't think it was going to be. But in terms of the other than that kind of layering system, I remember that. I mean, I came into LBP3's development quite late on. I was 2013 and it came out 2014. So I knew that it had quite the history before I even arrived there. So I had seen earlier drafts which had a varying amount of layers, and I think at one point it even had 100 layers or something ridiculous. But the game had changed drastically. I think it kind of took a very, very harsh left turn when it first arrived at Sumo, and then very slowly with every iteration got more and more LBP which was for the better, very much for the better. But other than that, I don't know if there was a lot of changes to the layering stuff. Yeah, I'm not sure. What was the other part of that? You said something was in the dephysicalize that was in LBP
Right.
too. Yeah, I didn't know that dephysicalize was supposed to be in LBP too. But I did know that, for instance, Media Molecule had tools. A lot of the time, the tools that were introduced in the game after existed in the game before, but they'd not been thoroughly tested, or they weren't ready. For instance, I think the sticker cutter was available in LBP1, but wasn't until LBP2 that it was a thing. All that sort of stuff. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that dephysicalize was in LBP2. But yeah.
Yeah, of course. Let's see. What's a good one? What kind of levels do you enjoy the most? I know you talked about your favorite community levels and creators, but what genre of levels do you enjoy?
I mean, platformers are my bread and butter. I love a platforming game. I'm a big Mario fan, and I think I originally really liked them in LBP1 because obviously it was created initially as a platforming, solely as a platforming game. So I always really gravitated towards and wanted to make stuff that felt like really official. Like it was almost like an extension of the story mode. That was kind of my jam. And I really resonated with other people that kind of wanted to do that as well. And I think as the game went on though, and obviously we saw, the P2 was more about, game to make games and all that sort of stuff. I really appreciated, I loved a puzzle game. I loved, I think that's speaking from outside of LVP, but I love a puzzle game. Like, I'm all about that. So anytime anyone made something that was really unique in LVP, I was all over that. But yeah, I think platformers was my main thing. I loved seeing what people could do and the ways that people could really take the tool set and do things that you'd not, because of how versatile it was. Like, I loved when I went into a platformer and I was like, I've never seen that before. That's such a cool way to transition something or to move something, or that this gameplay mechanic is something I've never seen before. This power up, something I've never seen before. Like I loved seeing just how much you could do with just the platforming genre alone.
Yeah, platformer-wise, what's your opinion on Astrobot taking Sackboy's place? Do you think Astrobot or Sackboy should be PlayStation's mascot?
I love Astrobot, and I think obviously Astrobot has to be somewhat influenced by Sackboy. I mean, just the nature of a customized, like just the fact that Astrobot mimics so many different, other characters and stuff. I think that there's a lot. There has to be Sackboy like in Astrobot's DNA, but I can't be bitter. I can't be jealous. I just can't. It's such a good game and it's such a great character. And I really think. I mean, I joked. I think a while ago on Twitter, I joked that like Astrobot to Sackboy is like Buzz Lightyear was to Woody. Like it kind of, it was sort of this hip new, like it was the future, like it was this robot versus this very like sentimental toy. It was kind of the cool versus like the twee, like all that sort of stuff. So I think Astrobot deserves it, and I hope that we see more Astrobot. I think it's a great franchise that really knows what it is.
Did you ever play any of the Astro games?
Not
Astrobot, but the other ones like Astro's Playroom, etc.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. Sumo had a VR headset, so I got to play the Astrobot VR game. That was really fun. And then obviously the demos and stuff like that, and then the PS5, the one that was launched for the PS5, and then the one that was released years later and stuff. The one it's getting new speedrun levels and stuff now. It's just really polished. Yeah, it's like I really think it's like Sony's answer to like the polish of like a Nintendo Mario. Like it's great.
Did you ever play Dreams?
When it first came out, I played through the story mode. I think when it came out, I was in the midst of learning Unreal Engine to work on Sackboy, and it was giving me kind of similar, as in like it's a great tool. Like I admire the fact that you can do anything. But it's basically just a game engine. And if I was already learning, like struggling, well, not struggling, I was slowly working my way to, navigating and learning about blueprints and all these sorts of things in that. I was like, I'm not going to then devote also more time to learning another game, like another control scheme, another, like all these sorts of things. So, and it was just more beneficial, I suppose, to put all my energy into that. I admire Dreams for what it did and for what it was trying to be. But and I don't think it was trying to be like a progression or a spiritual successor to LBP. I think it was trying to be something different. But I think unfortunately a lot of LBP fans were maybe wanting it to be more of an LBP game than it was, or something adjacent to an LBP game. Um, I think it suffers from the fact that when you can do anything, it's sort of like this big scary blank canvas that, like, if it's an infinite possibility, that really like immobilizes a lot of people. Like,
There's no scope.
Yeah, and I'm always a big fan of like limitation breeds creativity. I think that's one of the reasons I really resonated with the first LBP. It was like, how can I use this limited tool set to make a calculator? And people did. Like, I loved that element of it. So when it's like it's so powerful that you can do anything, that's great. And I love that for people that really utilized it and made games in it. That's so cool. But I think it really, when we looked at the telemetry for LBP3, the percentage of people that were creating to playing was like 90-10. Like, the creation people were so small. And I think for Dreams, it exacerbated that problem, I think. So
right. About telemetry, can you go into I'm not sure how much you can share.
I was about to say, did I like accidentally open a...
No. But like, of course we're gonna, dig in the roots here because there's a lot of info that the community still wants to know after all these years. But involving telemetry, what kind of data were you looking for and gathering, if you're able to touch on this? And what did you actually use the telemetry for necessarily?
Actually, you have interviewed Dino. Dino was, I think, a big pioneer for the telemetry. Like, that was kind of his jam for quite a lot, like, afterwards.
How were you involved specifically?
I wasn't really involved in telemetry.
Okay.
I didn't really have any, as I said, that was kind of like Dino's job, I think, almost to that point. So he really worked with Stephen Isbell to, like, it was a lot of like, even stuff like navigating, through the community and what people were like looking for and how people looked for things and all that sort of stuff. And like how long people were like in the pod, how long people were doing XYZ. That's kind of what they looked at. But I was busy creating DLC content and stuff, so I didn't really have a chance to really delve into that. But I knew there was a lot going on behind the scenes. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. I didn't know they collected data on how long you would like be in a certain area of the game, like the pod or the moon. That's interesting.
I don't quote me on that, but I do think there was collectible telemetry on pretty much everything within the game. But yeah.
Oh wow, that's actually quite fascinating. And talking about Sackboy Big Adventure, again, I'm gonna try and keep it to surface level questions. Let me know if you can't answer anything. But
yeah, sure.
What has it been like being a level designer on Sackboy Big Adventure, and what have been some of your most challenging moments and your most rewarding moments?
I think for a long time, we weren't really sure what the game should be. That was kind of a big thing. And for instance, it's no secret, but we looked to a lot of other kind of isometric multiplayer games, and I think it was kind of one of those things where a lot of the times it was a kind of, if it's not broke, don't fix it type scenarios. So we did a lot of experimentation, and then a lot of the times we realized that, these other games do this because that's just how you do it. Like, it's just the best way to do it. So I think once we kind of realized what game we were making and the kind of the limitations of that, I think we were able to run with it. I guess in terms of being really rewarding, I remember when we kind of were going and we'd gone into production, I remember one of the first levels I ever made was, there's a level called Water Predicament, and it's like, it's in the Amazon, and it's like the water level is basically just rising and sinking. And that was basically, I think it kind of remained pretty much untouched. Like I did the grey box, and then it pretty much remained untouched until it was arted, and like what you played in the final game was basically my first draft of the level. But I remember people played that, and our creative director, no, Ned. I was about to say I was unsure about naming him, and then I realized he was in loads of the promotional material. He was the guy in the orange sweater, but he played that, and I remember him saying like that was sort of me making the standard, like the kind of quality standard of what a layout should be, and that was like a really proud moment of me, because I mean I wasn't a principal at the time, but yeah, like hearing that and kind of setting that kind of quality level, I think was a big moment in my career. And yeah, I think other than that, like I remember taking on the challenge of doing the like post game content, and like seeing that come together. It was really late in the game, and seeing it come together really quickly was really rewarding. I remember I'd been pestering people for so long to try and get a game plan together for it, and I wish we could have done more. But I'm really happy with what we ended up doing. I think those levels are really cool, even if they're like really hard.
Right. And I'd imagine there were some challenges with the engine too, because I remember at my last contract job when I was a game developer, we made the ultimate technical decision to use Unity instead of Unreal Engine. We were going to use Unreal Engine, and I had made games both personally and professionally in Unreal Engine previously, but I think we chose Unity because it just had better, like a better sort of lightweight hood to it. Unreal Engine just has a lot of plug and play. You can install tons of plugins, and sometimes with all the blueprints and the C++ coding capabilities, it can become a bit much for simpler tasks, but we won't get into that. I just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, no, I mean, when I will admit that, I mean, we tried using Unity for a little bit, and obviously it's quite code heavy. It's not as like transparent as something like Unreal's blueprint system. And I found that for a game like Sackboy, where it was pretty much the entire focus was on variety, you know, every single level pretty much had something different in it. For prototyping sake, like from an LD perspective, like being able to just prototype and use the blueprint system to like test out new objects and all these sorts of things, like it was really, in terms of rapid production and like just testing loads of stuff, it was great for us because it meant that we didn't have to rely solely on programmers and things. Yeah, I think it definitely ended up helping us, I think, in the long run, even if like the networking of it was pretty hard. You know, eventually, like we had to go through all of our level objects. We had so many, and like make sure it was all networked was a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, node grabs can get freaky too, pretty freaky. But interesting tangent. How do you feel about Sackboy having a voice in Sackboy Big Adventure?
I didn't mind it. I remember it being. I was very like a purist, an LBP purist, and I remember when I probably still have it somewhere, but I remember I put together a PowerPoint presentation, basically being like, it was like what makes LBP, like, because I remember right at the start of the similar to LBP3's development, right at the start of Sackboy's development, there was a lot of suggestions, a lot of things that were even more kind of removed from LittleBigPlanet in terms of tone and like style and all this sorts of stuff. And I remember putting together this presentation that was it was like everything that makes LBP, all the kind of, you know, the stickers and all these different like level objects that are kind of what I thought was iconic to the franchise, and like basically like, can we get these in somehow? But even me, after all that, like I remember when it was first brought up, him having a voice, like that was kind of like sacrilegious. But like, I think there was talk of him being fully voiced at one point, like literally like saying lines, and everyone was so like that sounds awful. And then, but I think as it went on, I think it didn't end up being that bad. I do think he talks, maybe he grunts and stuff maybe a bit too much, but I think it was kind of okay because like even in LittleBigPlanet, I think the audio team really tried to make those kind of grunts and all those sorts of things. Like I think they were all based on the few grunts that he did in the original LittleBigPlanet, like when he's drowning or he's popping and all that sort of stuff. Like he kind of makes these like the little noises and things. So I think they tried to kind of honor that tone by kind of making it quite childlike and high pitched and stuff. So I think it was all in good faith, and I think, as I said, he obviously never talks, thank goodness. But like, yeah, I think what it ended up with was perfectly acceptable. I think it kind of honored the past whilst moving forward. So yeah, I remember that the name of the game came very late in production. I actually don't think it was decided by Sumo. I think it was decided by an external company, but because I remember that we were all gunning for a Little Big Adventure, and then obviously there was the rights there was the rights thing with the game Little Big Adventure, so we couldn't use that, unfortunately. But
interesting.
Yeah. Which I think that's just had a new game. I think Little Big Adventure. So maybe that's why they wouldn't let us, because there was a new game on the horizon. But
about PS Vita, right?
Oh, I mean, I could. Okay, I have thought just sort of something, but yeah, we could.
Okay, we can get to it after this.
Okay, yeah.
I, of course, looked through your wonderful resume, and I noticed that you had put for your work on PS Vita. Can you go into some of the specifics regarding your work on the game?
I remember that it moved quite fast. I would say that. Like when I went to work on it, the story mode was pretty much kind of fully formed, which was good because it was like less than a year before release. But I remember that like big decisions were kind of being made quite a lot. Like a lot of the levels, even though they were like made and ready, a lot of the time they were like, we're going to scrap it and change the level completely. I remember I worked on secrets and sticker switches. That was my big thing. Like all of the sticker switches in the game were made by me. And some of the 2-time sections and things like that. And but I remember my first big task was to work on I think it was the second level of Land of Odd, and it was already made pretty much like all laid out. And then I think it was like a task that I just had, like it was just a task that was kind of in my back thing. I just kind of, when I didn't have anything else to do, I would work on it. And then I remember, like, I want to say 3 months before release, one of the directors was like, "Oh yeah, I'm taking the level. I'm reworking the entire thing." And I was like, "Oh no!" Again, it was like my first experience of not being too precious and all that sort of stuff. And I think the level's obviously cool the way it ended up, but it was shortened quite a lot, and a lot of the content was changed. But I think the ending of that level I ended up making, like there's like a chase sequence, a really short one that I think I ended up making. So some of my stuff ended up in it. But yeah, as I said, I just remember it moving really quickly. A lot of big decisions being made. I think at the time, I think there was a Coaster Valley level that got cut, and it was like, again, it was one of those things where it was my new experience to game development and LBP and working on LBP, but the nature of having a theme with one missing level, I was like, that's not possible. Like all LBP games have like a certain number of levels per theme. We can't cut. And yeah, obviously it didn't matter in the end. But yeah, it was fun. I think everyone that worked there, I mean, Tarsier is such a great studio, and like they have such a sense of self and like their identity. And I really think that they did a great job injecting that into LBP. But yeah, they're so talented over there. Like it was really great. Like, and their offices were amazing. It was so airy and light and lovely. But the one annoying thing was just I know that like some people might, this might sound daft, but like we were working on PS Vitas, like to make the game we were working on PS Vitas. It wasn't like some con where we had like a PC version of it. We were working on the PS Vita, and it was it got a bit, your eyes got a bit like staring all day, like 7-8 hours a day, like every day. Like it was interesting. But,
which that's pretty interesting because Steve Big Guns actually mentioned that they had a PC editor for LittleBigPlanet 3. That's
not for,
I believe.
Not for. Oh, unless you there was a PC editor. I think they used it for LBP 1, just because obviously that they were needed to make the game when there wasn't anything. So they kind of built it primarily on the PC editor. The PC editor for LBP 1, for 2 and 3, it was not used for what it was intended, but it was basically a way, we had like palette files, which were kind of, palette files were basically level files. And how it worked was that the Poppet loaded palette files. So the levels in the PC editor were used to store all of the assets that were in the Poppet. So you would basically open a level and it would just be all the materials, like squares of the materials, and like you would select each one and be able to set all of its properties and stuff. And that was how they all ended up in the Poppet. But that we didn't use the PC editor for like making levels in LBP3. Like to be honest, it wasn't good for making levels.
Okay.
There was certain things like you could load a level up and like, I remember there was like streaming stuff where, for instance, you could like make certain connections, or there was like there were certain instances where like we added things between the PS3 and the PS4 versions. Like some things would only show up in the PS4 version. I remember that was handled sometimes by the PC editor, but we never really. It was just. I mean, by that point, obviously, the in-game editor was so advanced and easy to. I mean, the whole point was it was easy to use, so it would have been way slower to use the PC editor than just the actual one on the PS3. So
right, juicy info there. I did not know the truth about the palette levels. Can you go into more detail about those? Because I remember, because of course, since I modded LittleBigPlanet, I looked into those palette levels and actually loaded them within the game. And I remember one of them having an ant in them. I remember one of them, yeah. It was just very interesting. Can you go into more detail about those? Anything you remember specifically?
I mean, I don't remember about loading. Like, again, I don't know how interesting of like behind the scenes all this is, but like,
very interesting.
I mean, for the average player, but like, I remember LBP3 particularly. I mean, even LBP2, but like, I will say that like it's archiving of assets was not the neatest thing. It was kind of, as I said, it was a game built on a game built on a game, and every iteration, had, we'll try a theme and we'll make these assets, and then, oh wait, we're not going to use that theme and we'll move on and all that sort of stuff. So there was a lot of palette files and a lot of assets of a lot of archived themes and a lot of different things. And I remember post-release going through quite a lot of them, just kind of out of curiosity, seeing what was in them. Even going back to LBP1, trying to find like palette files of some of their cut themes and things like that. It was really interesting to go through and try and maybe see. Like, I think one of the things I proposed post-release was like, again, I said it as a creator, someone who loved creating, and I know that not a lot of people liked creating, but I wanted to basically release like asset packs of stuff that we'd not released, stuff that was just a random array of like cool materials and decorations and stuff of all of this stuff, but it never progressed like from a production perspective. But I think it was really nice. I mean, there's hundreds of stuff, hundreds and thousands of things that people never got their hands on, but there was a lot of really cool stuff.
Yeah, I need to talk with the tech director who worked on LittleBigPlanet 3 about that, because with all the palette files and stuff, there was also, and we'll get to your Sabbath thing in just a minute, but I remember the dev team on the game didn't really, I guess they kind of pivoted away from how FARC files used to work in LittleBigPlanet 1 and 2, because whenever patches were released, or not patches, it was like during the development of the story mode, assets were stored in multiple different FARC files specific to each part of the story mode for the different curators. And in 1 and 2, everything for the story mode and the entire game was just in one FARC. It was called the data FARC. But in 3, it's like split into like 50, 100 FARCs.
Right.
I need to talk to him about that, because I want to know why that decision was made. But anyway,
it probably wasn't intentional. I think it was just, as I said, LBP3's development was, a lot of different things were tried, a lot of different themes and assets and stuff. I mean, all great stuff. Our environment artists did a really great job making so many things. But I guess it was just all those different files probably weren't kept organized and as much as LVP 1 and 2s were.
Yeah. So about the Sackboy Big Adventure thing that you remembered, can you touch on that for us?
I mean, it's not particularly interesting, but I was just going to say, just because I get teased a lot for it, but like there was a level that was cut from the Amazon that I made, and I called it H2O No, and it was basically a vertical level that it was very unique in that you started on one side of the screen and then platformed to the other, and then you raised the water level, and basically the two sides were floating, and they would raise to the next level, and you would platform across another part and raise, and it was like that. So it kept going. And I always get teased because I think my creative director and my other principal they didn't like it that much. But I always joked that if we ever made a sequel, we should bring it back.
Is there anything else you would like to talk about? With our audience, anything you'd like to share about your experience just being a part of the community, working on the LittleBigPlanet games? Thaba?
Yeah, I mean, what would I like to share? I think the main thing was just that seeing the community like keep going, like really keep going, seeing how dedicated people were. Like, I mean, I deleted my Twitter recently, but I still had people messaging me, like sharing their like. So they're sending their updates to their projects and things like that. And some of the stuff they sent was just so impressive, and it's really heartwarming. As someone who basically started their career like through playing LBP, like to still see people really like making things that I probably wouldn't ever be able to make. Like it's really impressive, and like I would love someday to be a part of and to create a new game or something that kind of had the amount of influence and affected the amount of lives that LBP has. I see it as such an honor to have been part of the LittleBigPlanet franchise. Like, yeah. I've had people, and I've worked with schools on projects and things like that, and like seeing like how it's allowed people to be like creative and express themselves. I think that's that's one of the most important things in life, and I love that. I love that I've been able to be a part of that.
A bit of a tangent. Did you ever get any rare pins by working on the game? And if so, did you have any favorite pins?
I think I did. Um, I'm not sure what they were though. I know that's a really boring answer, but I think I had like ones about like going to a game jam. I think I had ones about. I think there was a pin that was like you being a developer of the game. I think I did get one like that. But yeah, sorry, I can't give more specifics. I can't really remember.
That's fair. What are your plans for the future moving forward? Where do you see yourself in a few years?
What, LBP related or like just me in general?
Just general. It can be LBP related too, if you want to tie that in.
I mean, I would love if like we got to make another LVP game. I don't think it's going to be on the horizon. Like I think PlayStation's focusing on like Astrobot and stuff now, but yeah, I mean, I would love that, but I don't think it's on the horizon. But I guess just in terms of me though, I'd love to release some games. As I said, I'm going to try and work on a game outside of Sumo, which should be a nice little game. I'm a big puzzle game fan. I've always really wanted to kind of carve a little bit of that genre out for myself, and I'd love to work on like, is it called a soccer band game, kind of block push type genre. So I think I'm gonna try my hand at something like that. Like start simple, and yeah, I think I'd love to have at least maybe in a couple of years' time, like release a game on Steam. I think that would be really fun.
Yeah, some sort of indie game or something. I mean, I've done indie games, and even as a professional, making indie games should not be looked down upon because it's where all the creativity comes from. I think a lot of big studios, and I'm not saying this about Tarsier or Sumo or Media Molecule or any of these studios. They're all great studios, but other studios, that you may have heard of, like Activision or whatever, they just get so big that creativity kind of becomes stifled at a certain point. Like being a level designer at one of those companies where you're working on a AAA, game like Call of Duty, for example, it just gets, it gets tiring. There are just too many constraints, and you just don't have as much freedom. And I would know that because one of my good friends is a QA tester at Activision, and he has seen, he has seen a lot of the developers at Activision who worked on COD, the new one, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, should have said that, not COD. They kind of have this repetitiveness and, to everything. And
yeah, I suppose it is a franchise. It's a machine, isn't it? In terms of new installments and things. So,
right.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I'd encourage everyone. Even I've had multiple side projects, and for a long time, LBP like making contests and things was sort of a creative outlet outside of my own job to kind of keep me going, kind of get some satisfaction and stuff like that. So I think this is the first time in a while where I've like actively wanted to kind of test my skills and learn new things, particularly in like a video game space. And it's exciting that like I think we're able to do that. Like even just not even to get money from it, but just the idea of like having a game and having it out there for people to play whilst also having my job. Like I think that's really cool. So yeah, hopefully everything goes well.
I hope so too. So I have one last question. I promise. One last question to ask you, and then I want to go ahead and show you this cool thing that I alluded to at the beginning of the interview. I think you'll like it. All right, Mr. Hall, I've got one more thing for you. Which is better, Coke or Pepsi?
That's a good question. I'm going to say Pepsi because I really like a Pepsi Zero, like a cherry Pepsi Zero, because they do cans of it for free in the Sumo offices, and I love them. However, I would say Coke if lemon Coke was still a thing. It's not a thing here, and I used to love a lemon Coke.
Oh wow, I didn't know anything about that. Lemon Coke.
Yeah.
Wow.
Unless I dreamt it, but I think it used to be a thing here.
Wow, I can't believe I haven't heard of that before. I mean, I knew there were like, what was there? There was like lime Pepsi? Maybe I'm misremembering that.
That's quite a new thing, isn't it? Lime Pepsi. I'm sure we've just started getting that here, but maybe it's an old hat in America. I don't know.
Might have been like lemon and lime, yeah. Lots of like fruity variants of existing drinks. It's crazy.
I'm totally going to Google lemon Coke after this and realize that I like dreamt it.
It might just be a fever dream.
Now that I'm saying it, I'm wondering if I'm having a weird childhood memory of pouring my dad's Coke and adding lemon juice to it, and like thinking that was, we used to have a lemon juice squeezer that looked like a lemon, and I used to squeeze it into the Coke. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. And I just assumed all these years later that it was a branded thing, but maybe not.
Honestly, you're not the only one, because I told this to Dean and Kenneth Young. I told them both that when I used to go to restaurants when I was younger, I used to mix Coke and Pepsi or Dr. Pepper together into one drink. I would like mix it up like a cauldron and drink it like a witch.
Oh no, Coke. Okay, Coke with lemon is a thing. Sorry, I was just Googling to check I wasn't crazy.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. It came back in 2001, so yeah, it was a very long time ago. But yeah.
Wow. I remember the Crystal Pepsi being a thing, for sure.
I've heard of that. I don't know what that is, but yeah, I've definitely heard of that.
It's like a clear variant. All right, so I am going to go ahead and do my outro here, and I'll cut it in Streamlabs, and then I'll show you this thing. So, will you like it? So, outro time. Yeah, so everyone, that was Mark Hall, one of the best level designers, LittleBigPlanet 3 and Sci-Fi Big Adventure. It was a pleasure having you here on the channel, and of course being able to chat with you and gain some valuable insight into the history of LittleBigPlanet and what makes games great, and ultimately, to be more specific, what makes levels great at the end of the day. So yeah, stay tuned, guys, because we'll be posting more LittleBigPlanet content and interviews in the next few weeks, in the coming weeks. So make sure to stay tuned for that, and keep LittleBigPlanet in your hearts. All right, peace.